Iran may use weapons that have never been used before to attack Israel. Ukraine is being abandoned when America stands side by side with Israel in the Middle East. The reason why Iran is condemned, even though it explains that it uses the right to self-defense to attack. Iran is ready to attack Israel with weapons that have never been used. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian warned that if Israel continues to retaliate against Tehran, Tel Aviv will face a quicker and stronger response. Iran's foreign minister said in a phone call with her German counterpart Annalena Baerbock that if Israel continues to adventure and aggravate the situation, the reaction will be immediate and even greater. Mr. Abdollahian added that Tehran's goal is to warn Israel of the possible consequences of crossing the red line. In addition, Mr. Abolfazl Amouy, spokesman for the Foreign Policy and National Security Committee of the Iranian parliament, affirmed that Tehran is ready to deploy previously unused weapons if necessary. Mr. Amouy emphasized that Iran has developed a comprehensive strategy for all possible scenarios. In case Israel escalates retaliation, weapons are ready for the second phase of response, which has never been seen before, used in the conflict with Israel. Previously, an anonymous senior administration official said no drones launched by Iran posed a direct threat to the U.S. military, but the scale of Washington's response to Iran's attack exceeded beyond anything we have seen in decades of tension between the two countries. A U.S. Department of Defense official told the Washington Post that additional assets would be mobilized to strengthen regional deterrence efforts and protect U.S. military forces. The Pentagon is concerned about any potential risks that current tensions in the Middle East may pose to the thousands of U.S. troops stationed in the region. Iran is still known to have a variety of missiles in its arsenal, including medium and short-range ballistic missiles such as the Shahab-3, Qatar, Zulfikar and Ahmad. In addition, Tehran also successfully tested the Kibar-3 hypersonic missile. Regarding atomic weapons, Iran signed a nuclear agreement with 6 world powers in 2015, under which the country pledged to limit its nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of international sanctions. The U.S. stands side by side with Israel in the Middle East pan of fire. Is Ukraine abandoned? Observers in Ukraine have been skeptical about the support of the U.S. and its allies for Kyiv following Iran's recent attack on Israel. When Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel in an airstrike last weekend, Israel relied on a critical tool that Ukraine still lacks: direct, immediate support from the United States and other partners with military assets in the region. For more than 2 years, Ukraine has faced Russian missile and drone attacks, often including Iranian-made Shahid drones like the one Tehran used in the recent raid. Ukraine must rely on a series of air defense systems provided by Western partners, including 3 Patriot batteries designed by the U.S. and operated by the Ukrainian army. This month, the largest power plant in Kyiv was attacked. On the contrary, when a barrage of weapons was launched from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen to targets in Israel this weekend, U.S. forces prepared to respond with fighter jets, Patriot batteries in Iraq and other U.S. destroyer. Britain, France, and Jordan also stepped up support. Together with Israel's Iron Dome air defense system, the U.S. and its allies claimed to have knocked out 99% of about 300 Iranian missiles and drones, avoiding major damage to Israel. According to the Washington Post, the difference in the U.S. response caught the attention of observers in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that last week alone, Russia launched nearly 130 Shahid drones, 80 missiles and 700 guided bombs into Ukraine. Ukraine has had to rely on its military forces and dwindling ammunition supplies to deal with Russia. According to President Zelensky, the immediate response of countries to Iran's attack on Israel proved that modern air defense systems can be effective and that such defense efforts are still feasible. The whole world sees that Israel is not alone in its defense efforts. The air threat is also being eliminated by its allies. And when Ukraine says that its allies should not turn a blind eye to the name Russian fire and drones, which means it is necessary to act and act decisively, Mr. Zelensky added. However, in the context of a $60 billion aid package stalled in the U.S. Congress, Ukraine is gradually running out of ammunition and other necessary equipment to maintain defense against airstrikes. Similar to President Zelensky, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba also mentioned the direct help that partners have provided to Israel. Even if countries cannot act the way they acted in Israel, give us what we need and we will do the rest of the job, Mr. Kuleba declared. Ukrainian officials say they need 26 Patriot systems, each worth more than $1 billion, to cover the entire country. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron told British radio station LBC that partners needed to support Ukraine financially, diplomatically, and provide weapons for self-defense in addition to military training. Foreign Minister Kuleba recently increased pressure on the West to receive more air defense systems. So far, only Germany has agreed and announced last weekend that it would send an additional Patriot system to Ukraine. Some Ukrainians expressed hope that the largely intercepted airstrike in Israel would spur action on Capitol Hill, where aid to Ukraine could be tied to further support for Israel. Ukrainian officials are not the only ones comparing the situation in Ukraine to the Middle East. Now it will be very useful to strengthen Israel's anti-missile defense capabilities and equip Ukraine with similar systems. The easiest way is to unlock aid packages for Ukraine and Israel, Polish Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski comments. Ukraine's close geographical location to Russia also poses a challenge, as missiles and drones often travel only short distances to reach their targets, giving Ukraine only a few minutes to react. Meanwhile, Israel and its partners had several hours to prepare for Iranian attacks, the ISW report said. Others say that Israel's multinational defense system shows that Ukraine is being abandoned. What conclusion should Ukraine draw? We can only trust ourselves, Ukrainian lawmaker Oleksiy Goncharenko wrote on Telegram. Why does Iran say it uses self-defense to attack Israel, but is still condemned? At dawn on April 14, Iran carried out an unprecedented attack on Israeli territory. Iran said this was an act of self-defense and had no other choice. Speaking to the United Nations Security Council on April 14, Iran's representative explained that Tehran exercised its inherent right to self-defense when it launched an unprecedented attack on Israel over the weekend, according to the agency. AFP News. Iran's representative said the country had no other choice but to respond. He added Iran does not seek escalation or war, but would respond to any threat or aggression. Based on Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, Iran affirms that it only exercises its inherent right of self-defense in case of armed attack. The United Nations and the international community condemned. However, Iran's retaliation on April 14 was condemned by the United Nations, the European Union (EU), and many Western countries. On April 14, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres reminded that retaliatory actions using force are prohibited under international law. I remind all member states that the Charter of the United Nations prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres said at the United Nations Security Council on April 14. The above statement is similar to Article 2(4) of the United Nations Charter. All member states of the United Nations shall renounce the threat of force or use of force in international relations against injustice, encroachment upon the territory or political independence of any state, or otherwise contrary to the purposes of the United Nations. At the same time, Mr. Guterres also condemned Iran's attack on Israel, and warned against further escalation of tensions, self-defense or attack using force. However, Article 51 of the United Nations Charter is one of two special exceptions to the principle of prohibition of the use of force or threat of use of force, Article 2(4) of the United Nations Charter. The principle of prohibition of the use of force or threat of use of force is the most important principle among all basic principles of international law. The remaining exception is that countries can use force if the Security Council grants it the authority of this agency, based on the provisions of Articles 39 and 42 of the United Nations Charter. This principle is applied in a number of cases to protect world peace and security. These two exceptions are widely accepted and no country denies or disputes them. Therefore, to determine whether Iran's unprecedented attack on Israeli territory is an act of self-defense or an attack using force, it is necessary to determine whether this country fully meets the criteria. based on Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, or not. See you the, Gwyn tu vi qua kak quoc gia duoc thoanan tai du 51 qua hien chuang lin heap quoc nu sao, kong ko mot du koan now trong hien chuang nai lam tan hai den Gwyn tu vi ka nan hai tap the chin dang trong truong hop ton vien lin heap quoc by tan song vu trang cho den kai hoi dong bao chua ap dung duoc kak bien fap kan thiet de duwe tri hoa ben va and nin quoc te. Du 51 kung qui den en hung bien fap ma kak ton vien lin heap quoc ap dung trong vik bao vi Gwyn tu vi chin dang I fi duoc bao nai cho hoi dong baoan va kong duoc gay on hung gi den Gwyn han va trak nin qua hoi dong baoan, chiu theo hien chuang nai, doi voi vik hoi dong baoan ap dung bat ky luke now and hung han dong ma hoi dong thay kan thiet de duwe tri va koi fu koa ben va and nin quoc te. Thursday not, mot quoc gia duoc su dung Gwyn tu vi trong truong hop ko mot quoc tan song vu trang nam den quoc gia du. Veo gay 1-4, toa lan su chuan Irano Thursday du Damascus qua Syria de by fa hui trong mot quoc tan song duoc cho la bang ten lua qua Israel. Theo qui den qua lip fap quoc te. Vu dan bom qua Israel veo di su chuan Iran o Damascus dong nia voi mot quoc tan song vu trang nam veo lendo Iran.